The Seven of Swords is known as futility, a state of something bearing no fruit, a situation of which is hopeless. Perhaps in the emotional sphere, it can represent a laying down of one's swords, a sensation that one wants to give up and say, what's the point? On the Rider-Waite card, we can see a character attempting to carry away swords from a space of battle, and yet there are two left behind because it would be impossible for them to carry them all away. Why, however, would they want to carry away all these swords in the first place? It could be that they are being clouded by their emotional centre rather than actually seeing the situation for what it is, such as what we were suggested to do on the previous card. This shows up on the Tree of Life where we are in Netzach, and Netzach is called Victory, and it's all about that power of endurance, of going through the storm and coming out the other side. And yet, it is also associated with the world of emotions. And so, the emotions actually overtake our reasoning and our intellect, and explain why we feel confused. We're in the grasps of success, and yet we feel it is futile. Perhaps we just lack the get up and go to actually get things done, and so the potential is still for success. But we need to overcome this crushing futility, this depression, if you like, of which clouds the card. Astrologically, it is the moon in Aquarius, and so again we have that strong emotional impact here. We've got Netzach and we've got the moon, and they are clouding all of the science that we saw on the previous card, that quality of understanding and forging out a path for ourselves. Now we've been caught in the world of illusion, in the state of intellectual limbo where we know basically where to go, what to do, but we feel weakened, we feel we've lacking clarity, lacking energy, and basically we can't be bothered, that type of thing. And so we see this on the symbol on the card, the central sword in the middle. It could be actually the sword of which we see on the Ace of Swords. It is the spark of creation. It's that knowing where we want to be and that cutting out the path in order to get there. And we can see that because it has upon its hilt the sun. And so this is our spiritual centre. This is where the light has actually entered into us and gave us the inspiration to come this far in the first place upon our journey. If we didn't have the inspiration to begin with, we wouldn't even be here. And we also had to have the intellect and the drive in order to get us this far in the first place. And so that's astrologically going to be Aquarius showing through. And so here we have the moon overtaking Aquarius, overtaking and weakening our sense of self. And because this sword therefore represents the sun is actually in its fall state in Aquarius, and so that really does show up that our intellect has been put to the side for the moment. Our wonderful powers of manifestation are at a low ebb. And one of the reasons it's doing that is, as we've seen before, we tend to sacrifice our own success, certainly on this suit of cards. And so all of the other swords surrounding the central one are us attacking our own potential. And these are all the reasons that we are telling ourselves in that sphere of emotions for why we shouldn't be bothered, of why it's not going to happen, and that type of thing. And so all of the swords actually have upon them planetary symbols, and so they represent all of the different attributes of the consciousness in the unfavourable aspects of the planets and how they might affect our present moment. And so the sphere of Mars here to begin with shows a general lack of energy to actually put up a fight and get through whatever stands in your way. It's basically attacking oneself by telling yourself that you aren't strong enough to do it, or that there's no point because it's going to be too much hard work, that sort of thing. And all of these, of course, are quite dangerous in themselves, but when they build up to a whole, that is why we see so much chaos in here. The next one down, for instance, actually shows the sphere of Venus, and yet it is in its negative attribute, and so it's telling yourself that you are not loved, or that you will not find love if you continue to go down this path. You're sabotaging your own ability to feel and sense a universal love in everything by saying you will be broken-hearted if you continue down this path. And so it's basically saying stay where you are, don't go any further because it's not going to work out. It's your consciousness genuinely and literally holding you back. We also have the sphere of the moon. This shows rings linking around each other, forming the lunar crescents. And this is attacking the emotions with the emotions. It's telling yourself there's no point following your intuition. There's no point following on with an instinct because it's only going to end in disaster or something like that. And this is really damaging because it's following that intuition. It's following that instinct that often gets us wonderful results and sees all sorts of things link up, where here you're saying, oh, that's not true, that's not going to happen, that sort of thing. On the other side, we have the sphere of Jupiter. This is an interesting one, as it represents one telling themselves that Lady Luck isn't on their side, that sort of thing. And it could be that Lady Luck is just behind the curtain counting out your winnings, and yet by the time she makes her appearance in the light, you have left the stage because you've decided that she wasn't there. And this is perhaps a big problem with our modern age. We've come to expect instant results from things straight away, and that's just not how things work in the universe. Things take time to grow and to form, and we have to have that endurance and that patience to allow them to actually come through. And we can see also here the sphere of Mercury, showing that we have at this time a poor level of communication, and this can be either with others or even just with ourselves, that internal monologue. And so words and speech, very important, because they are the way of which we actually express the state that our consciousness is in. And we can communicate with others very badly and they have no idea what we're talking about. And we can also do that with ourselves, where we drive ourselves mad, like we saw on the previous cards, with all of this internal chatter, of which attempts to hold you back and attempts to actually stop you from changing your paradigm, from changing your results. And that's actually a very important part of this. The final sword, for example, actually shows Saturn, which shows that we don't have the flexibility to get around the problem. Perhaps this means that our thought processes are too stuck in the mud, too rigid, too set on rules and regulations of which just enslave us at the end. We need to break out of them and make things happen, and we need to change our paradigm, which is connected to the subconscious mind, of which just accepts what is taken into it. And so often we've got no idea what our paradigm actually is. We're just going through the world and reacting to things that happen around us rather than actually making them happen. And so we can see this in the background of the card. The lines are very chaotic, they are muddled, our thoughts are not clear, we don't know where we're going. You can't get to where you want to go if you don't know how to get there. It sounds very simple, but that's really the way it is. The background of the card is also very pale and cold. It doesn't look very comfortable at all. It's certainly not a warm and friendly looking card. And so what this represents here is that we're not letting our warmth shine through. We're not letting the wonder of our consciousness and our unique personality show itself. Instead, we're coming across as closed and cold and not very approachable. And so getting this card can mean that we are sabotaging our own potential, that perhaps our mind is distracted right when it needs to actually be focused on something. And it does tend to do that, our mind. It tends to hold us back, and that is because of the paradigm. The paradigm, the way of being, doesn't really want to change. It's comfortable as it is, and so it's going to attack us with all these different swords, telling ourselves all these different reasons why we shouldn't bother. Because when change happens, it will actually be very quick, and it will actually charge onwards, and there's no stopping it, which is why actually the Major Arcana card associated with this card is the Chariot, which is that movement and that change. And so this card can appear really quite grim, and yet if we think about the Chariot there, we need to use that to motivate ourselves to get away from this state. And so we need to say, well look, we have these chaotic mental images in our mind, and our subconscious is attacking our own potential, and nobody can stop that apart from ourselves. We've brought it on, we can stop it. And so we need to change our paradigm, change our way of being. We haven't given up hope. We need to find the will, which we have, because if we didn't have it, we wouldn't have got here in the first place, remember? And when we find that will, we can stand back up, and we can once more see the path of which lies in front of us.